Yeah, hi. I think we can start the session. Miss Aishwarya. Yeah.
Sure. Anushka, I think you're on mute.
Online learning is not the next big thing. It is now the big thing. A very good afternoon to everyone present here. I am Anushka Bhaduri, the moderator for today's session organized by Law Internships. Law Internships was started with the objective of providing first-hand experience of the day-to-day functioning of various legal bodies through legal internships to students pursuing undergraduate and postgraduate programs in law by Mr. Shubham Solanki sir, co-founder and partner, and Miss Amrita Jain ma'am, partner at Law Internships. We have amongst us today Ms. Aishwarya Todalbagi ma'am, who is a technology, entertainment, and media lawyer. Her clients include some of the largest domestic and international entertainment and media conglomerates and some of the most innovative startups and various artists. In 2019, she assisted in over 100 licensing contracts for her entertainment and media clients. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thanks, Anushka. You can also, if I may, please don't call me ma'am. You can just call me Aishwarya.
The brief topics to be covered in this session are Introduction to Technology Law, Introduction to Media and Technology Law, what does the TMT practice entail, different areas of interest in technology and media law, what is it to be like a commercial technology and media lawyer, and career prospects in the TMT space in India. Before we begin with the session, I would like to give a few instructions. It is going to be an interactive session. In case of any questions, write your question in the chat box and unmute yourself and ask the question. Also, I request everybody to mute their mics and turn on their videos. Without any further delay, let's begin with the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thanks, Anushka. Prerna, can we put up the presentation? Okay. Hi everyone. It would be really nice if you guys could switch on your video because this is a bit weird for me. I'm just looking at like random names. Hi. So I'm Aishwarya, like Anushka already introduced. How I planned this 1 hour session today is I thought the first 30 minutes, I will take you guys through what exactly is technology and media law. And then the next 30 minutes, we could probably do like a Q&A and I'd be happy to answer any of your queries. So to start with, do you want to go to the next slide? Prerna? Okay, until the slide comes up. So like Anushka already shared, what I'm basically covering today is what is technology law, what is media and entertainment law, what are the career prospects in the TMT space in India, and what does TMT practice actually entail, and how do I learn more about the TMT space and industry in India, right? So to give you guys more context, I decided when I was in my 4th year of law school that I wanted to do tech law, but it was a little difficult for me back then. I think it's much easier now to kind of figure out what exactly is tech law. So I know it sounds very exciting. I mean, especially if you're someone that enjoys and loves tech like I do, like, wow, what is tech and media law, right? So what going to try and do today is to give you guys an understanding of what are the different areas in tech and media law and what does it actually mean to be a tech and media lawyer. So to begin with, if you can go to the next slide. Prerna, can we go to the next slide?
Yes, ma'am. There's, I think, some problem. 1 second. Sorry for the glitches.
No, that's all right.
Yeah.
So to start off with technology law, right? What do you guys understand? when someone says technology law? So like how in litigation, your main statute is your Civil Procedure Code. For tech law, it's your Information Technology Act, which is literally your bread and butter for your TMT, tech, media, and telecom. Everything stems from the Information Technology Act. Then the next big thing in tech law is, of course, like I'm sure all of you here know, data. And while India does not have a data protection law in place, we do have the information technology, the SPDI rules, which are your reasonable security practice and procedure sensitive personal data or information rules. Now, then there are the RBI regulations. So for some of you who have done internships in the TMT space, I'm sure you all are familiar with it. But for the ones who haven't, what are your RBI regulations? So the RBI regulations there are quite a few of them, and especially this comes into play majorly with respect to fintech. What do I mean by fintech? Fintech is your payment aggregators, your payment gateways. To put it simply, it's your Paytm, it's your Google Pay, your National Payment Council of India. All of that is fintech, and all of this is governed by the RBI regulations. Then there is, of course, IP. IP is really central to your TMT laws, right? Because your IP, what is tech? Tech, what is your code? It is all copyright, right? Even when you're putting up on Google, there are so many of these ad infringements. What is all of that? That is basically your trademark infringement, which is why I think this is something that I didn't realize when I was in college, that IP is very central to TMT law. Like IP is basically your base, which you have to understand. Of course, you don't have to deep dive into it, but just the basics, which is your trademark law, copyright, and patent basics. To go on, then can we go to the next slide? Also, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to unmute and go ahead and shoot, or just you can also, I think, put it in the chat box. So what are the areas of technology law? I thought I'd take you guys through there are tons. Okay, I should caveat that by saying there are tons. These are just a few that I've picked out that I have worked on to a certain extent. Fintech, like I said, fintech is all of your payment aggregators and payment gateways. Now, what are payment aggregators and payment gateways? If you all are familiar with, when you go and buy a ticket from, let's say, Book My Show or a smaller website, right? Like Shopify or ShopX, when you go to the payment page, you have various options. You have your debit card payment, you have your credit card payment, you have your UPI, and then you have your net banking. Who is the company or entity that is bringing all of this together? That is your payment aggregator. Your payment aggregator is, like the name itself suggests, it aggregates all of these payment systems together to provide it to entities like Book My Show, etc. That is your payment aggregator. Then there is your payment gateway. What is payment gateway? Payment gateway is your CC Avenue. I'm sure you would have, if you notice, when you're making payments, you will see a little CC Avenue at the bottom of all of your card payments or any of your online payments. These guys are basically your connect between your banks, which allow you to, they kind of build the technology to debit your bank account and then transfer it to the company's bank account, to whoever you wish to pay. Now, where is the law in this? Because I realize I'm just talking about the tech, right? The law comes in when, what can these payment aggregators do and payment gateways do? This is all regulated by the RBI regulations. In fact, in March of this year was when the payment aggregators and payment gateways regulations were passed by the RBI, which talks about how and what these entities need to do and what are the rules that they need to comply with. Then there is, of course, your KYC norms, which comes into fintech, which is a very big part of the fintech ecosystem itself. What is KYC? KYC is know your customer. Why is this important? When you look at it legally, it plays a very important role because you don't want to, when you're taking on a customer onto your platform, you want to know who that customer is, right? So you want to do some sort of check to ensure that person A is who person A claims to be. But how do you do this? You can build the tech, yes, but you need some sort of regulation to guide you on how to do it, what to do it, how to go about the entire bit, which is what is governed by your KYC regulations. There are various type of KYC regulations. I mean, there's your EKYC, which is, then there's your offline KYC. So I'm sure all of you are law students. So to give you an example of EKYC, this is being used a lot, especially in the past few months, given the pandemic situation. To elaborate, so usually in India, while we have the digital signature concept under the IT Act, we didn't really use it as much, and we always physically execute your agreements between two parties. But because of this pandemic and the lockdown, it's been really tough. So a lot of players like your legality, and legality is one that I can think of at the top of my mind, are players in the market that are allowing you to do EKYC. Now, what is EKYC? EKYC is when one wants to certify that that document has been signed by that person, right? So you go on to this platform that provides this service, you enter your mobile phone number, and then you enter your Aadhaar number, sorry, and you get an OTP to your phone number. And once you enter the OTP, the document is executed. So this constitutes a digital signature under your IT Act. So these are just like tad bits of fintech because, I mean, I think otherwise fintech would be a topic by itself, but this is just to kind of give you a brief idea of what fintech really is. It's all your laws and regulations that govern the fintech industry, which is really booming, by the way. There is your, I think right now the big thing in fintech is your lending, your small term, your short and small loans, pocket size loans, which is what it's called in the industry. These are really big. Why do they need lawyers here, right? Like you might, what role do lawyers play here? You'd be surprised, but they play a very important role because we advise entities like this on how to structure these loans. And by structuring these loans, I mean, how much can you give to which type of person, and what are the details that you require from this person, right? What are the licenses that you require? What all data can you store with you? What all data about these people can you share? So if I don't know if you guys have heard of OK Credit. These are one of the biggest market players in the market currently who are looking at, providing loans. Then there is Instamojo also, who provides to a lot of MSMEs. So this is what your fintech is. I hope I haven't bored you guys. Okay, then there is data protection and privacy. What is data protection and privacy? It's, as the name itself suggests, it is the protection of your personal and sensitive data, right? And personally identifiable data. What is personally identifiable data? This is a term that you will hear thrown around a lot, especially if you're in the TMT industry or if you're reading any TMT related article. Personally identifiable data is data that you can associate to a certain person, right? There is aggregated data and then there is personally identifiable data. Aggregated data is what most of your companies claim to collect. So if you've ever looked at, the privacy policies or terms and conditions of all of these, even the basic apps that you collect, that you download onto your phone, like WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, Gmail, they will all talk about how aggregated data is collected, which is unidentifiable because they are aggregating it in a way that it is not identifiable to a certain person. But identifiable data, to give you an example, would be your name, your address, your phone number, your email address. Any data that you can associate to a certain person is what is personally identifiable data. While in India, I'm not sure if all of you know, so there was the Karak Singh case, which first talked about the right to privacy. Then there's, of course, the famous Puttaswamy judgment, which gives you the fundamental right to privacy. And as of now, while we do not have a personal data protection bill, it is ongoing and hopefully it will be passed by the end of this year. I really don't know because we also thought it would be passed last year, but it's taking its own sweet time because that is not, but also in other just like general info on the personal data protection bill, it is pretty much exactly like the GDPR, right? The GDPR is the data protection law in the EU that came out in 2018 May, if I'm not wrong. Yes, 2018 May. Right, so this is based off the GDPR, and it is been structured in a way to protect personal data of all citizens of India. So that's your data protection and privacy law. Then there is health tech. What is also, guys, again, if you have any questions, please, because I feel like I'm just rambling. So if you have any questions, please go ahead, unmute yourself, let me know, or you can also just put it in the chat box, right? And Anushka can.
Ma'am, there was a question by one of the students, Uditya Das, when you were explaining fintech. Can't
Yeah.
we use Aadhaar card instead of KYC?
So Uditya, Aadhaar is actually a part of, I mean, KYC is know your customer. So you can use your Aadhaar for KYC, if that makes sense. So like I was explaining, when I said EKYC is something that a lot of companies are doing now to execute or sign documents. It is when you enter your Aadhaar number, and that kind of verifies, when you enter your Aadhaar number, the mobile number that is linked to that Aadhaar number receives a text message, an OTP, which you then go ahead and enter. And that is your KYC process. That is your EKYC being done. So it kind of verifies that, okay, Uditya, if you had put in your Aadhaar number and you received an OTP and then you enter that, it kind of verifies that, okay, this is Uditya, because only he can have access to his Aadhaar and his mobile phone number. Does that answer your question? Okay, I'm just going to hope that it does. Moving on to the next topic that I was going to talk about is health tech. What is health tech? To give you a very basic example would be your Practo, right? I'm sure all of you have heard of Practo, at least on the radio, given the number of advertisements. All of this is health tech. There is, where you kind of figure out whether your client who wants to do video consultation, is that allowed? If it is, then who is liable? That is what is health tech law, and what is your job as a lawyer when you're advising these health tech companies? You try and limit their liability, because you have to structure it in a way that they are a mere intermediary and they should not be held liable. What do I mean by liability? Is when something goes wrong, who is the one who would be held responsible for that loss or injury that has been caused? It should not be your company. So to figure out and come up with a structure wherein the platform is not held liable is mostly what health tech is. Of course, I mean, that's just like a very basic overview, but that is what health tech entails. Then there is your blockchain. I'm sure most of you here are familiar with what blockchain is. This was actually, based on my experience, blockchain was very big in late 2018. I think that's when the blockchain boom happened. And then there was the Supreme Court judgment about the cryptocurrency being banned, etc. So blockchain is another area of tech law. Another example of where blockchain is used, I mean, it's not it's not only your cryptocurrency, but there are also platforms such as your video on demand platforms that use blockchain infrastructure to kind of display or stream content. So that's blockchain. Then there is artificial intelligence and machine learning, which is, yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Ma'am, there's another question by Namit Srivastava. What is CC Avenue?
CC Avenue is a payment gateway. So again, this is with respect to fintech. What they do is they, like I said, they connect banks and they act like a connector between banks and entities, which will help transfer. They build the tech for transferring the money from your credit bank to your debit bank. Basically, if I make a, let's say I order a donut on Swiggy, right? I go on to I say I'm going to pay with my debit card. When I go there, you will, I think Swiggy uses CC Avenue. I mean, CC Avenue is one of the biggest players in the market. So you will see it somewhere on one of these online payments, wherein I have to go enter my card details, right? And then the money is debited. Now that whole action of the money being debited from my bank account and being credited to Swiggy's bank account, and then from Swiggy's bank account being transferred to, let's say I ordered from Dunkin' Donuts to Dunkin' Donuts bank account. Who's doing all of this? This is CC Avenue. And CC Avenue is a payment gateway. Why are they called a payment gateway? Like the name itself explains, they are kind of like a gateway to make these payments, right? And they have to comply with certain laws. Like there are certain data security principles that they need to follow, which are very detailed in nature. I'm not going to deep dive into it, but that is what is your CC Avenue. It's a payment gateway, and that is a fintech, I would say, is a practice almost by itself. Does that? I hope that helps and answers your question. So the next one is artificial intelligence and machine learning. This is, honestly, it's very exciting and also very tricky because it is such a gray area. You just have to figure it out, which is also kind of what makes it a lot of fun, because there is like a new tech or new algorithm that is come up with on a pretty much daily basis, where you need to kind of figure out what do you think would be the applicable laws. That is what your AI is. I would say in India, it is still growing. It hasn't, based on my experience, it really hasn't hit its peak. In the US, it most definitely has, because I feel like, the Bay Area there is where most of these AI startups are concentrated. Not saying that it isn't in India, but it's still kind of upcoming here. Then there is competition tech. Competition tech, again, is a completely different area by itself, right? I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the whole Apple, Samsung fiasco that happened a few months ago, which is basically competition in the space of tech law. Also, I don't know how many of you watched. So yesterday, Facebook, Google, and Amazon, basically Sundar Pichai and Jeff Bezos, they all had to present their case in front of the US Congress about how to prove basically that they're not anti-competitive. So that is another area of tech law, which is again very interesting. It also requires like a detailed study of what is competition law. Moving on to can you go to the next slide? Okay, so that was what is tech law. I hope it was helpful. Now to come to what is media and entertainment law, right? What do you guys understand when one says media and entertainment law? Of course, it is your movies and your TV shows, etc. But what I'm referring to is media and entertainment industry with respect to tech. So that is basically your OTT platforms. What are OTT platforms? Your over-the-top platforms, which are your Netflix, your Amazon Prime, your Z5, your Spotify, all of those are your OTT platforms. Now, media and entertainment industry, I think in India or world over, is something that's really growing because this didn't exist. I mean, 10 years ago, there was no Netflix, right? I mean, there was no Netflix that wherein you could stream things. So the law also is really evolving. But where does all of this stem from? Just like how the Information Technology Act is, of course, important for media as well. But what is especially more important when it comes to media and entertainment is your Copyright Act. And the two basic things that you need to know in your Copyright Act are basically what is license and what is assignment. Okay, to put it very simply, assignment is something like, let's say I am gifting you a book, I'm assigning it to you. Okay, and what is license? License is when I am lending you my book. So I am telling you that this is mine, but you can keep it for a while and you can use it, you can read it. That is, I'm licensing copyright to you. Assigning is where I'm just telling you, hey, you know what? This isn't mine anymore. The title is yours. You do whatever you want with it. These are the two main concepts that we kind of need to keep in mind with respect to copyright, because this is what forms like the very basis of copyright. To there were okay what else comes into play when you think of copyright, right? Or when you think of media and entertainment law, there are okay, how I would look at it is, you have to, for any law that you're studying, it is always very helpful to start with reading the bare text itself. So your bare act, because you don't realize when you're, even though, you're not always advising them on, oh, this is what you can assign, this is what you cannot assign. What comes into play is when you're drafting your commercial contracts for these media and entertainment clients, you need to ensure things like, one, that you always say that if you're assigning, your assignment is perpetual and worldwide. If you guys have had a chance to look at any contracts, which assignment contracts, you will notice that a good contract always has perpetual and worldwide. Why is this there? You need to go back to the Copyright Act for this. This is because under the Copyright Act, any assignment, unless explicitly stated, is only for a period of 5 years. So unless your agreement says perpetual assignment, it won't be perpetual. Your assignment will lapse after 5 years and it will go back to the owner of the copyright. Then it has to say worldwide. Why worldwide? Because under the Indian Copyright Act, it is only within India, unless, again, expressly stated otherwise. Then another important concept under copyright law with respect to just IP in general, I think, is the concept of work for hire. What is the concept of work for hire? It is basically when, let's say I hire person A to create some work for me, or let's say he's going to design a platform for me. That would be work for hire because he is going to, whatever he is designing with respect to that platform, the IP rights to that platform is going to rest solely with me because it's a work for hire project. Right? So that is another really important concept that comes in copyright law. Now, with respect to your OTT platforms, there are various types of OTT platforms, right? Or I'd rather say various models in your OTT platforms. There's your pay-per-view, there is subscription model, there is your on-demand service, and then there are these new entertainment and media platforms which promise to give you an online virtual theater experience. All of this, what is the role of an entertainment and media lawyer in this kind of arrangement? It starts from the very basics. You need to license content for these platforms, wherein you will need your content licensing agreements. Then of course, you need to negotiate, you need to ensure that you have all the rights. You need to, again, limit your liability if you're the platform, because, in the event the person who has created the content, the producer, has not sought the appropriate performer's rights, then you need to ensure that the platform is not the one that is held liable, but it is the producer that is. So this is where these are the small but very significant things wherein a lawyer is required to kind of vet and draft these documents. I hope I didn't lose you guys with performer rights. That is actually a whole other ball game, which is your performers rights are for your copy for your songs, the ones who make the background music and all of that. They have performers rights to that music. And in fact, under the Copyright Act, sorry, I'm deviating, but just like this is an FYI since I brought it up, there is, you have your copyright societies, you have your IPRS, which is your Intellectual Property Rights Society. You have your Indian Singers ISRA, Indian Singers Rights Association, ISRA, wherein basically you receive royalties. So even if to give you an example, on Spotify, okay, if let's say I made a song and I license it to Spotify, how do I make money out of this, right? If I'm a singer, this is where your entertainment and media lawyer will come in, because you need to kind of, although Spotify already has like a fixed amount of royalty, but basically the number of times your song is streamed is the amount of royalty that you receive. So to give you like a very basic example, let's say Spotify made 100 rupees this year, okay, and there were 5 songs that were streamed on it with 5 artists, sorry, and based on the number of times each artist's songs were played or songs were streamed, that 100 rupees will be divided in that ratio between these 5 artists. So that's how it works. And that is where your royalty concept comes in. Sorry, that was a complete deviation, but anyway, to move on, can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, an intersection between tech and media law. What do you understand by intersection between tech and media law? Do any of you want to try taking a go at it? Because I just feel like I've been speaking nonstop.
Ma'am, hello ma'am, this is Pallavi. Am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you. Go on.
Ma'am, I'm not sure, but I think when media platforms stream some movies, like for example, in my mind it's coming like Netflix takes our phone and number to make an account of us. So I guess that is where the role of tech law comes in, so that our data is protected.
Absolutely. That's bang on, Pallavi. Thank you. I really appreciate it if all of you kind of stepped in here and there, because it's really, I'm going to take a water break. Sorry, I've just been speaking for so long. So like Pallavi explained, it is, it's not just your media law and your tech law, which all of this is kind of interconnected in more ways than one. Like she rightly pointed out, you need to ensure that you're complying with the SPDI rules when you're collecting details from your subscribers. That is one of the main things. And another example actually that I'd like to share with you guys is something that I came across personally a few months back, which I found very tricky to kind of figure out and wrap my head around, which I'm still working on also, was this product, which basically this product is being pitched to various VOD platforms. And what they do is your camera turns on when you're watching content being streamed from a VOD platform. And the camera records how your iris or how you react to it. So whether you're crying, whether you're happy, they scan your iris for the same, and then figure out or gauge how the users or viewers of these platforms are reacting. And accordingly, they not only rate the content, but also kind of help the platform figure out what kind of content these viewers actually enjoy. It seems great as a product, but if you think of it legally, it's really scary, because there are a lot of issues. there is your data protection. I mean, somebody is literally, your camera is on, right? They need to give you consent for that. What are they going to do with this data? How are they going to use it, right? Like what all, I mean, artificial intelligence, while it is so cool, if it is not regulated, it can really go haywire, because what all is this algorithm going to learn from observing your reaction, right? And who all is this data going to be shared with? So this is just one of the very many interesting intersections that you come across in the space of TMT, which I personally enjoy. But it's also why you cannot do media without tech, right? They all kind of interconnect in some way or the other. Can we go to the next slide, Prerna? Okay. What does the TMT practice area entail? So when I was in law school, I just knew in fourth year, like I said earlier, I knew I wanted to do tech law, right? But I had no idea what it was. I mean, I knew it was really cool and like, oh, I get to know what tech is. I get to advise like really cool and big tech companies and kind of be part of the entire industry without having to code, which sounded very interesting and very appealing to me. So I thought I'd kind of give you guys an overview of what it is like in a day in a TMT team in a law firm. So I usually begin my day with, I figure out what my to-do list is. And then you have your client calls, wherein you kind of understand what is the product and figure out what does the product do. So that's where your commercial viability and importance of domain knowledge comes in. To advise a tech company or even a media and entertainment company, as a lawyer, it is very important to understand what the tech is actually doing. Because unless you understand how it works, the entire infrastructure, you will not be able to advise them. To give you an example, to go back to fintech, okay, with respect to lending, unless you figure out where the money is going, from which entity to which entity, you will not be able to tell who is supposed to comply with what, which is why it's very important to understand the product itself. So tech law is not just about the laws that regulate the tech, but it's also very important to kind of keep up with what is happening in the tech industry. What are the new innovations? What is the new AI that's come out? Because you kind of need to always be quick on your feet and figure out what would be applicable in what scenario, right? What laws would be applicable? Although, like, I must say, most of it is a gray area, and it's, a large part of it is unregulated because it's evolving on a daily basis. But to know that it is unregulated, you kind of need to know what the product is, which is why domain knowledge is very important. Then there is your commercial document. So once you figured out once you figured out what the product your client is offering, you kind of need to, there is your commercial documentation, which is your agreements. I mean, I know sometimes agreements can sound really boring, but it's actually a lot of fun, especially when it's a tech agreement, because once you've understood the tech, you need to ensure that you're legally covered, right? You are not held, you need to limit your liability as much as you can, which is your commercial documentation. And then there is your advisory, which is based on the regulations. Let's say if it's a fintech product that one of your clients wants to release, then you figure out what are the relevant regulations, whether it is regulated at all. If it is, what are the compliances that are required? And what most law firms issue is what is called a memo, which will kind of help the client figure out what they can do, what they cannot do, and what are the risks involved. So that's what a day in a law firm looks like if you're a TMT lawyer. Then can we go to the next slide? Okay, what are your tech agreements? I know I've mentioned commercial agreements multiple times through the past 40 minutes. So your terms and conditions that you see on all of your applications that you download, or just any online website, that I'm sure most of you just say, I agree, all of your click-wrap agreements are what are drafted by TMT lawyers, and your privacy policy. Your terms and conditions are basically your standard form contracts, which tell you what I as a user can do with the platform and what I cannot do. And also kind of lays out what you will be liable for, what the company would be liable for, and what they would not be liable for. Then there is your privacy policy, which is in accordance with your SPDI rules. As per the rules, it is required that any platform that stores or collects any sort of personal data has to have a privacy policy in place. Then there are your API integration agreements. What are your API integration agreements, or what is API? Like I said, domain knowledge is very important. Right? API is basically, in layman terms, I would say it is something that you plug, it is sort of a plugin that you put onto another app that provides you a service. Right? There are, I think some of the examples that I can think of at the top of my mind are Decentro and Setu, which provide fintech APIs for a lot of fintech companies, which will allow you to do one service much faster without you having to build the tech for it. For example, there is a KYC API. So if you are providing a fintech service or any banking related service, you need to undertake KYC of your customers. So you can just use a company that makes these KYC APIs, integrate that into your system, and you can just use it that way. You don't have to sit and build the tech by yourself. Now, I'm sure most of you are thinking like, why do you need a lawyer here, right? It's all really, you just need a bunch of coders to put it in and integrate it and it's done. But you'd be surprised, lawyers play a rather important role here, because you need to ensure that this API integration does not kind of result in any sort of bugs or any sort of data leakage on your client's part. You need to make sure that it's foolproof, and for that you need to first figure out how the API is working, API is integrating, on whose system it's going to be on, what is the data that the API is collecting. That data, if it is collecting personal data, then where is that data being stored, right? How and who is that data going to be shared with? How long is that data going to be stored? What is the purpose of storage of that data? That is where the lawyer comes in. Then there is, I noticed that we're running short of time. So I'm just kind of going to run through the other agreements, which is
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Ma'am, which data can be sold? Many companies resort to selling data, many application companies, and it is not just in India. The data is collected from people worldwide. So
Yeah.
how is that regulated, and can it be sold?
So that's a very smart question, Divya. Technically, you cannot sell data unless it is maybe aggregated. Unfortunately, in India, like I mentioned, we don't have a strong data protection law. There is just the personal data protection bill that is going back and forth in the parliament, which has not been passed yet. So all that we have right now is the SPDI rules, which basically says that, your personal, if you're collecting any personal data, it needs to be secure. And how we interpret it is, if you're collecting any data, you kind of need to consent to it. And if you are sharing it with any third party, you need to again seek consent from the customer or from the user, whoever personal data you are collecting. With respect to selling it, you cannot, of course you cannot sell it, but what a lot of companies, I understand what from their working is that they kind of aggregate it and sell it, right? Which is technically in the gray because we don't have anything that regulates it currently. But if you look at the EU, it's very, very strict because they have the GDPR there, and the fines are also really, really large in amount. So EU, I think, would be like the ideal place to kind of look up to with respect to data laws. But that is just something that is ever evolving. Yeah.
Hello, ma'am. I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, ma'am. Okay, we are talking about as a lawyer perspective as of now regarding technology and data protection and privacy policy. But recently, Dunzo had a breach of data, some privacy data, right? So, what do you suggest, like being as a customer? What do you suggest? What action should a layman should take in situations like this? If there's a breach of data, what the possible things we as a customer can do?
That is actually a very interesting question because I did read, I think this morning, about almost 1 million people's personal data was leaked. As a customer, I mean, at the top of my mind, what we can perhaps do is we have to prove that we have suffered some sort of loss because of this data being leaked. If we can kind of quantify the loss that we have suffered with this data being leaked into the dark web, as they say, then we can go ahead and sue them, saying, I have, because I have a right to privacy, you cannot just leak my data, right? And because my data has been leaked, I have suffered loss because of XYZ happening to me. That is perhaps what we can do, but that is also, I must be honest, quite idealistic. I don't think, unfortunately, I mean, it is an interesting idea that we could perhaps discuss post this call, and I'd love to give you further insights because I think that's something that we really have to delve into on how it works. But to give you like a very basic answer, you can go ahead and sue them, but not much will come out of it, unfortunately. As Dunzo, though, what I'm really not sure what they have done, but what I suspect they would have done is gone to the CERT, which is the Center for Emergency, I don't remember the full form, but basically it's under it's under the IT Act, where there is any sort of security breach which has affected a large number of people or users, you have to report it to the CERT ASAP so that they can take action to kind of undo the damage at the like we chat webinar. Uh, so to back to where I was, your software service, your SaaS.
I'm sorry to interrupt, ma'am. There's a lag, like video is lagging. So could you just repeat what you were saying before?
Your online products, which
Hello. Sorry for the technical glitch. The ma'am will be rejoining the session in a while. Kindly bear with it. All right. Thank you.
Hi, sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Sorry, I'm having some issues with my internet. I was saying, Prerna, I don't know if you heard the last bit of my answer, but basically I would love to discuss this after this call. I mean, we could take this offline and I would love to share my thoughts. If
Sure,
this is,
ma'am. Yeah, sure.
yeah. I was talking about the technology agreements. The other ones that would be applicable is your SaaS subscription agreements, which are your software as a service. What is your software? What do you understand by a SaaS product? Your SaaS products are basically software that that is not on your system, but it's cloud based, but you subscribe to it. To give you an example of SaaS product, I can think of very technical ones like there is, all of these delivery aggregators. So there, Wama Ship, I think, is one of the biggest ones that I can think of at the top of my mind. So a lot of these merchants, your MSMEs who sell online, they use SaaS products to kind of better their services. One of which most of them use is like a delivery aggregator service, which is a software that is provided to you through an application. It's application based, which means that the software is not planted on your system, but it is on the cloud, and you kind of receive the services through that application. Now, the legalities with respect to that are what are addressed in your SaaS subscription agreements. Then you have your end user license agreements. These are what, when you are viewing some content online, you have to accept terms and conditions of a EULA, which is your end user license agreement, which is your license to view that content or use that IP that is being provided to you through this platform, through that particular platform. Then you have your software development, software reseller agreements, which is again very your basic. If my client wants some sort of software developed or some sort of his software resold to other people, right? Then what are the legalities that are involved? You need to ensure that there are no bugs, in the software. You need to ensure that there are enough disclaimers to protect your client. That's what goes into your software development. Then your software reseller. Then you have white labeling. White labeling is actually one of the very something that you will work on a lot with your tech companies. To give you context, what white labeling means is a lot of these companies, one I can think of at the top of my mind is Impulses. They give you this white labeling service for portrayal or display or streaming of content, which is basically they give you the back end. So all the algorithms and the code is theirs, but the front end is of another client. So let's say I want to start like um, my own boutique for water bottles. Okay, then I can use company X is backend. They will white label their product for me. So their product will already have everything in place, which is the payment, all of the payment systems, and it will have like the whole selling option, the buying option, to upload it, to put in your comments. This is a very basic example. So when I sign up for their service, you won't be able to see company X anywhere, but it'll look like it's Aishwarya's boutique. So it's being white labeled as mine. While it'll look like it's my technology, it's actually company X's technology. So that's what white labeling is. Then you have your lead generation, which is a very common agreement, commercial arrangement agreement that you will enter into for a lot of your fintech companies, especially like I mentioned right now, lending is the big thing, wherein you cannot lend if you do not have an NBFC license. So what a lot of these fintech companies are doing is they're generating leads for the customers that they already have onboarded. So they enter into arrangements with NBFCs, which will which will basically put in touch their customers and NBFCs. So they are generating leads for these NBFCs. And what a lawyer's part in this is to ensure that all your compliances are taken care of, and to also ensure at no point of time are you coming off as an NBFC, because you cannot lend if you do not have a license under the RBI regulations. Right? Can we go on to the next slide?
Ma'am, there's another question from Garima Bothra.
Yeah.
The ARrogato has been mandated but has raised a lot of privacy concerns as it accesses both location and Bluetooth. So as a TMT lawyer, what are your views on the app?
Garima, my personal opinion is I have not downloaded it, and I am completely against it, because I think it really breaches your privacy to a large extent, which is not cool. Which is also why, if you notice, I think a month ago, or was it earlier, more recent, they said it's not compulsory, right? Because you cannot ask someone to share that you cannot mandate someone to share that information with you, because that it's my personal information. Again, this is something that I have a lot of thoughts on, which I would love to take offline, I think, because we're running out of time. But as my personal opinion, I'm against it. But I also really appreciate the fact that they said it wasn't mandatory.
Ma'am, there's
an question. Yes.
There's another question by Harshita Khare. Talking of AI, tech laws and upcoming technology, we have special humanoid robots like Sophia from Hong Kong, and also ISRO's Lady Robot. So can legal rights be given to all these AIs?
Uh, Harshita, that's a very interesting question. In my personal opinion, no, I don't think so. But that is something. It's a gray area right now. There are no laws regulating it per se. I mean, I would actually love to hear your thoughts on why you think they should be given legal rights. Do you want to, Hashita?
Good evening, ma'am.
Hi.
Actually, I think that these robots can be given legal rights because they are replacing humans in a sense like that. The Vyoma Mitra was sent to space, was the first human robot to sent to space by ISRO. So, and also these robots are being placed at receptions on in certain companies, and they are dealing with the clients, and they are being adopted in the day-to-day services. So why cannot even they can go wrong sometimes also. My point is, if a AI is producing something, like if an AI is producing something, then what if that can be IP protected, right? So where they need to be provided rights so that if that AI produce something, or if a robot is producing something like a document, like let's say an article itself, so where those articles IP right will go, like who will be holding those rights?
So, Harshita, my concern, I mean, I'm going to just paraphrase this. And again, I think this is very interesting that I'd like to discuss. But I feel like the problem with giving them legal rights is they are still learning, right? And we should hold the person who has developed to be responsible, because otherwise it can take its own trajectory and we will have no control over it. This actually reminds me of, if you guys remember what happened, I think in early 2018 or sometime in late 2017, when Facebook had created these two robots and then they started talking to each other, and it was just, I think it's very scary to kind of delve into, which is why you need to ensure that when something like this is being created, it is very important to have a policy in place to kind of decide prior to creating something like this, what is it going to do? What is this AI going to do? What is the purpose of this algorithm? How is it going to help us? Because if this is not ensured while it is being created, it can go wrong. And we don't know how good or bad it can be, right? And the fact that it can be bad is what is really scary, and which is why I feel like if we give them legal rights, that's just going to allow them to kind of go haywire, which is really not okay. In other, if there is this compilation of artificial intelligence policies. I can't remember the name of the book exactly, but this was published by iTech Law, which has a very interesting take on this. You should definitely give it a read, and I'd love to discuss this further. I'll also share the name of the book later on. It has very different, but I think the views stated make a lot of sense.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks. Okay, so I see that we've already run out of time, but if it's okay, can we extend by another 20 minutes? Does that
Yes,
work?
ma'am, sure. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What are your media agreements? Like I already mentioned, you have your content acquisition, your content licensing, your collaboration, and content production. Your content acquisition is when your OTT platform is acquiring content. Your content licensing is when a media house is licensing its content to a VOD platform. Your collaboration is when two media companies are coming together to create some type of content. So if you notice, like when the whole lockdown situation was really bad, in India last 2 months, a lot of companies like TikTok, etc., came together to kind of collaborate with these with NGOs and with Bollywood actors and actresses to put up a show. That's where your entertainment lawyers come in, because they draft your collaboration agreements wherein it is decided what rights these actors who partake in this content will have, what rights TikTok or any of these kind of platforms will have to the content that is created. Then there is your content production. Content production is when a tech company or any production house kind of comes together to create content, which is, what are the rights involved, who has the rights, who is responsible to ensure all of these rights are sought from the respective person.
Excuse me, ma'am.
That is your, yes.
Ma'am, I have a doubt.
Yes, please.
Ma'am, when we go to watch movies in theaters, some movies have the policy like we have to be 18 years or older to watch that particular movie.
Yes.
But when that same movie is streamed on a Netflix or Amazon Prime, so like it's accessible to many people, like children below 18 years can also watch it. So how does that work?
So why this is in place is because your movies are regulated by your Cinematography Act. And the way Cinematography Act defines a cinematographic film is does not address how your movies are streamed on an OTT platform, which is why you have your CBFC regulations, which is your certification board, wherein you have 3 different types of certifications when you go watch a movie in a theater live. Whereas when it's with respect to an OTT platform, these are regulated, right? Most of them are self-regulated. So in India, not so much, but especially in the UK, Netflix has a set of rules that it has come up with by itself based on, based on their own research and findings on what is okay and what is not okay to be portrayed on these streaming platforms, which is also something that is evolving in India. There were draft rules that were put out in early 2019 by IMAI. Those, however, they're still in discussion, but there is no law per se in place which regulates platforms, which is why while you're able to watch an adult movie on Netflix, you cannot necessarily do that if you're not 18 years old in a movie theater. Does that, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, ma'am.
Cool. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, coming to the last bit of my presentation, your career prospects in TMT law. So I know I've really touched upon a lot of things. I'm hoping I haven't confused you guys. But I think the 4 main things that you can look at if you're considering TMT law as a career, one is your corporate bit of TMT, which is your mergers and acquisitions, your private equity, and your venture capital. What is mergers and acquisitions is like the name suggests, when 2 tech companies come together or when one tech company is acquired by another. Then your private equity and venture capital is when a lot of these startups, right, they have Tiger Capital and all of these huge investment venture capital firms investing in them. So those are your PVC tech TMT lawyers who do mostly the corporate transactions and negotiations with respect to the TMT industry. Then there is your commercial and advisory, which is what I do, wherein you advise your TMT clients and you kind of draft documents and you help with structuring, etc. And here, the difference between commercial advisory and in-house is, commercial advisory is with respect to a law firm where you have like plenty of clients, and in-house is when you work as a lawyer with a tech company. So a lawyer in, let's say, Google is also doing TMT, except their only client is Google, right? So they're only looking out for their company, which is their client. Then there is tech policy, which is like a different ballgame by itself, which is also really interesting if you're into policy. But that's also something that I'm not very familiar with, but I thought I'd just put it out there for you guys. If you think you're interested, you should definitely look it up. And I'd also be happy to put you all in touch with my friends and colleagues who are into this. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so how do you learn more about tech and
Ma'am,
media?
I have a question.
Yes, please.
So you mentioned various responsibilities that TMT lawyers take on. In your experience, how many of these teams have you worked with, or do they specialize in certain teams, or how does it work?
So that actually depends from law firm to law firm. While some law firms I understand have like specialized teams. So some of them have like a data team, some of them have fintech team. There are also law firms because TMT is still growing and it's quite niche even till this date. So there are teams that do pretty much all of it. Also, it's important to kind of have the base, understand the basics of everything, and then you can deep dive into one, right? You can't do media law without knowing data, or you can't do fintech without doing data because there is an intersection at some point of time. However, what you can do is you can kind of just understand the basics of data and then deep dive into fintech. So, but organizational structure again is completely based on the law firm or company that you go ahead and join. I hope that helps. So how do I learn more about tech and media laws? One place that I really learned a lot, or rather like met a lot of people who are in tech law is through iTech law. So if you guys are in, I mean, of course, with this whole pandemic situation, I don't know anymore, but iTech law has these conferences across the world on an annual basis. In India, it usually happens in Bangalore, where you can apply to volunteer, just kind of keep a lookout for it, which is a great experience. And you really learn a lot because you meet all of the people who are involved in tech law, right? And it's a very small community, to be honest, because it's just a few years old. Tech law is something that is still evolving. And unlike corporate, where there are at least like 10,000 lawyers, I'm sure I'm not even exaggerating, in TMT, that's not the case. There are very few. So there is iTech law is something that you should look up, and there are tons of other organizations. This is just something that I got into when I was in my final year of college, which really helped. Then you should read blog posts and kind of be up to date with all the tech that is going on, the tech that is being developed and created. Also, laws with respect to that. So in India, there are tech policy firms like SFLC, CIS have great articles. I think someone has a question.
Yes, ma'am. Riddhi Jindal is asking, ma'am, under white labeling, why would an agency want to white label on their products? Like you quoted an example on water bottle product. The product is someone else and the labeling is others.
Oh, really sorry. I mean, that by label, tech to kind of showcase or upload my water bottles that I have created, which will have my name. So it'll say Aishwarya's water bottles are sold on this platform. While it'll look like it is my platform, the back-end technology, which actually helps me kind of process all of this, is what belongs to company X. So that's what I mean by white labeling. It's just the tech that is white labeled as mine. So if you're looking at the platform or the website, you will assume that it's been, I have created all of it. But what I've done is I've only provided the content for the platform, wherein I've just put in all my details, I've put in all the pictures of my water bottles, etc. The technology, however, is not mine. That belongs to another company. Does that clarify?
Yes, ma'am.
So I was saying you should read blog posts. CIS is great. The firm that I work with, Spice Root Legal, also puts out a lot of these articles which are quite helpful, which kind of just give you the basic understanding of whenever there is a new regulation out, or like there is also, you know, the judgment with respect to Schrems, the EU CJ one that came out last week. So we keep putting out a lot of articles on this. That is something that you should keep reading up on. Then there are podcasts. My personal favorite is TechCrunch Daily, which gives you like a 5-minute new. It releases in the at night, like around 6 a.m. ish, because it's US time. But it's something that I find very useful. It gives you like a 5-minute update on what has happened in the tech industry. There are tons of other podcasts too. There's Women in Tech, and then there's also CIS has its own podcast, which are all very informative and interesting, which is something that you guys should look into if TMT is something that you want to do. Then, of course, reach out, network with any TMT lawyer that you see on LinkedIn. That is just your basic networking. If you find something interesting, go ahead and comment, ask about it, jump into a conversation and discuss. That's a great way to learn. And then, of course, the obvious internships. You should definitely try doing an internship with a TMT law firm. I actually decided for sure that TMT was what I wanted to do after I did an internship with a TMT law firm, which really helped me decide that this is what I want to be doing, because there's nothing like getting hands-on experience than actually doing an internship. So yeah, that's about it. I hope I haven't bored you guys, and I hope this was useful, at least to a certain extent. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask away. Unfortunately, I have a hard stop in another 10 minutes. But if you have any questions, please go ahead, ask away. You can also reach out to me. I understand that Anushka will be putting up the details on their LawInternships platform for the same.
The floor is open for questioning. If anybody has some question, they can either write it in the chat box or can unmute themselves and ask the question themselves. All right, ma'am. I don't think there are any more questions, so I'll proceed to the vote of thanks. I, Anushka Bhaduri, on behalf of Law Internships, extend a hearty gratitude to Ms. Aishwarya Todalbagi ma'am, who honored us with this enriching session and took her time out from her busy schedule. I must also mention our deep sense of appreciation to all the students who are present today. Hope this session was a great learning experience for you all. Thank you again, one and all. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did.
Yes, ma'am. It was a great experience.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.